Hello, everyone. How are you? Is everyone hanging in there? I just did a Facebook Live just talking about um, the universe always conspires for us, never against us, even if we can't see how. So hang in there. You got this. And welcome. Thanks for being here. It's funny. You can tell I'm kind of a YouTube novice. I'm fairly new to this. I didn't know we had like a chat column. Has it always been there? So, if you're watching or you have something to say, you can actually type it in a chat and I will see it. Isn't that amazing? I knew we had a feature like that on Facebook Live. I guess for some reason I just never saw it here. So, did any of you get a chance to watch Perceiving Entities, which was 2 days ago? What was that? How was that for you? Cool. So today I want to talk a little bit about communicating with entities. So communicating with entities is very similar to perceiving entities in that it's going to show up completely different for every single person. I can only share some of my own personal stories and how it works for me. And I know other people have very different experiences. So when I was talking about perceiving entities, when you start to ask for, I'd like to perceive entities more. When you start to ask for, hi Patricia, welcome. When you start to ask for being able to communicate with entities more, then that will start to show up in whatever way works for you. So some of you may have heard before, but I had that experience when I was first playing with trying to perceive entities without drugs. and I heard a woman crying outside of me. There was nobody there. And that really freaked me out. So because I know now, and I learned then that I can, if something doesn't work for me, I get to choose. So you get to choose however it works for you, it doesn't work for you. And in that instant, I was like, no, I'm not going to be able, could you imagine, and this is just me, so my experience might be different, but could you just imagine that you're walking down the street and you are talking to a being that's here, that it literally feels like they're right there, and yet there's no physical body, and then they're trying to carry on a conversation with them? Well, my biggest fear, as most of you know, was to be seen as a crazy lady. But here I am talking about entities all the time, so oh well, too late. But back then there was that was a no in my universe. So if you're asking to be able to communicate with entities more, first thing, ask. And then would you be willing to be an allowance for however that shows up for you? Which means you have to kind of let go of your own preconceived ideas of what you think that should look like and how that should be and what that should be like, right? So for instance, that hearing a voice outside of me was not okay. Well, I was so good at shutting off my hearing at that point that my team could only communicate with me in pictures. So I ended up doing a lot of charades with my entities because they were trying to show me something and I just was left to guess what that meant because I couldn't hear them. Now I have a very good friend that can carry on a full-on conversation with her team, and she hears them, she carries on conversations. And I remember we were joking at one point, saying, okay, so she's like, oh, I'd really like to be able to see them. And I was like, oh, I'd really like to be able to hear them. And then interestingly enough, when she started to see them, she was like, I don't want to see them. um, and I've since asking to be able to hear better, I do hear better. So, some information about entities, ghosts. They don't have the same reference points to time and space that we do. So they do communicate very fast. So a lot of times that's why you might hear a ringing in your ears. If you're trying to communicate with entities and you get this like really fuzziness and this buzz, that's because they're talking super fast, kind of speaking more in energy, of course, right? Excuse me. Um, and when they're communicating in energy, they communicate really fast. You have to then sometimes ask them to slow down. So it's just, again, just a request. Just be like, hey, I know you're really excited. That's the other thing. Entities, when they know that you're actually asking to communicate with them and they finally have somebody who's listening to them, they get really excited. So then they talk super fast. So you can ask them to slow down. Hey, I'm kind of still in this physical body. I know you speak more in energy. Could you just slow it way down? And for them, they're gonna be like, this feels like I'm talking through mud, and it's probably gonna be a very understandable rate for you, and may even still seem fast, but you can just pick it up. So anytime that you're asking to perceive entities, communicate with entities, work with entities, it begins with a request, and then it begins with the asking for it to show up for you the way that works for you. So there might just be a lot of requests like, can you slow down? Can you? The other thing too is if you are starting to ask for entities, they are going to suddenly want to talk to you at the same time. So in Access Consciousness and with Shannon O'Hara's Talk to the Entities, they have this thing called office hours, and it's like setting a time once a week to communicate with the entities so that they're not trying to do it with you all the time. Hello, Alyssa, welcome. And so for you, asking, okay, I'd like to see them more, I'd like to communicate with them more, and do you want to set a specific time called office hours to have that happen? Because they're going to be super excited. They're going to be kind of up in your business, up in your grill. And you might need to say, okay, I do want to talk to you. I do want to work with you more. And could you wait till office hours? Could you back up a little bit and give me a little space? Allow me to do whatever I'm doing right now. Because sometimes, again, they have no reference to time and space and if you're working on your computer, it's kind of like a dog, because I have a dog. And she really doesn't understand why I spend so much time in front of this box. Like, I really could be petting her all day long. And she's like, what is that box? I don't get it. Right? So entities are similar in that there's nothing more important than me and what I have to say and what I want to do right now. So, and that's just enthusiasm for the most part, just because, again, I've said this, a lot of them, nobody's been paying attention to them for a very long time. They've been walking around, floating around, doing whatever they're doing, and nobody has seen them, heard them, acknowledged them, or been able to perceive them, but small hints here and there, right? So when they know that you're actually asking, and that asking is a choice, you do not have to have this, right? You do not have to go down this path. But when you start asking, then there's going to be a little bit of excitement, like, a kid is when the kid is like, mommy, 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 I have something to share. Pay attention to me, listen to me. I have something to tell you. So entities can be very similar to that. So that piggybacks on the perceiving a little bit, but then also as you start to ask for communication and, trust yourself. I think probably throughout this whole thing, and in any area of your life, I would highly recommend to just trust yourself. Trust that you are perceiving them. Trust that you are receiving communication. Another way that I used to get out of my own way with it was I would pick up a pen and a piece of paper, and I would literally freehand write. And if I would go back and read that freehand write, I could tell that when the when the communication was not mine. So when you, because every entity has its own inflection, it has its own way of communicating. Some may be very intense, some may be very joyful, some may be very lazy, laxative, not lazy, but mellow. Entities are like people. So they show up and they communicate in very different ways. So when you could do the freehand writing, that could be another way of communicating with them. You could start the freehand writing by asking a question and then just freehand whatever comes. And literally, sometimes I remember, and I still have it to this day, like when I would journal or when I would freehand write with the entities, I would sometimes, like I remember this one time, like it started with like blue parrot, blah, 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 like kind of like nonsensical words. But what I was willing to do was just write whatever word came. And then as soon as I got kind of the blah, blah, blah out of the way, then the communication got more clear. Cool. Now, I do want to say this because I think this is vital, and I'll probably repeat it many times on this. If it's a negative voice in your head, it's not you. If it's a negative voice, it's also not your team. It is also not your spiritual guides. Your spiritual team they have your back, and they are here to encourage you, to uplift you. They will support you when you ask them for support and help and contribution. And they will not interfere in your life. They are not here to tell you what to do. Your team will not tell you what to do. Right. So I think that's important, because when you start to communicate more, you can also pay attention to, okay, is this, and then ask questions, right? So you can also ask, as you're communicating with an entity, you can be like, is this part of my team? If this is part of my team, awesome. But then you can also go, or is this a ghost that is stuck here, would like to move on? Is this a demon? Like, you can ask all of those questions, right? And again, I will always say this, they are not more powerful than you. So you get to say what works for you. You get to say if it works for you. You get to say if it doesn't work for you. You get, right. Like, if you don't want to, communicate with them in full sentences and you want to do the picture guessing game, I don't recommend it. And you get to choose. You have choice. So anyway, I hope that's a contribution that helps. I believe that next week I'm going to have a weekly question and answer call. It's going to be $10 a call or $30 a month. And you can watch here and basically that's for your specific questions and answers. It'll be interactive. You'll be able to get on with me and ask me questions. You can ask about entities. You might have be having trouble with one of the tools or want to know more, or sometimes we'll do practices together. But that'll be like you and I having a dialogue. So if that would be fun for you, you can join that. We'll definitely be posting more information on that starting next week. Oh, thank you so much for being here. I adore and appreciate you all. Have a great day.